Next customer, please come this way, I called out. The cash registers were getting crowded, and the line of customers waiting was beginning to grow. Wanting to help ease the congestion, I quickly opened the register next to me and started guiding customers over. After a little while, the rush died down, and the store felt calmer again. With the lines finally moving smoothly, I returned to what I had been doing earlier, stocking the shelves with new items. "Mary, you're amazing at ringing up customers so quickly," someone said behind me. It was another part-time employee, smiling warmly. Her compliment made me feel proud. I truly enjoyed working at the supermarket. There were a lot of high school students and other part-timers around my age. The environment was friendly, and we all got along well. My name is Mary. I'm a 45-year-old housewife working part-time. I've been working at this local supermarket for nearly 10 years now. When my child entered elementary school, I decided to find a job that would allow me to support my family while staying involved in my child's life. That's when I applied for a part-time position at this supermarket, which was actively recruiting. It turned out to be a great decision. There were many other housewives like me working here, and our manager at the time was also a parent. It created a supportive atmosphere where people understood the challenges of raising children while working. Before I realized it, 10 years had passed. I had become one of the oldest part-time workers at the store. Many customers had become familiar faces. Some greeted me by name, and I had developed warm relationships with both fellow housewives and the younger student employees. But I never imagined that something so unpleasant would happen after all those years of loyal service. One day, we received news that the store manager, whom all of us appreciated and respected, was being transferred. Everyone was disappointed, but we understood that he had been promoted and was moving to a position at the headquarters. He was competent and had earned this step forward in his career. Although we were sad to see him go, we celebrated his promotion and gave him a heartfelt send-off. The new manager, however, was nothing like his predecessor. He came from headquarters and didn't seem to understand much about how things worked on the ground. No one said it aloud, but the general feeling was that being sent to manage a store after working at headquarters was a demotion. He was constantly nitpicking, disorganized, and generally unpleasant to work with. The atmosphere in the store began to change, becoming tense and uncomfortable. Rumors began circulating among the staff. Apparently, the president's wife had a soft spot for young, handsome managers. The new manager often spoke with her in a noticeably friendly manner, likely trying to stay in her good graces. But if his reputation was poor, the president's wife's was even worse. The president's wife complained constantly about the part-time staff, nitpicking things that didn't need to be criticized. Yet, when it came to the male employees, especially the high school boys, she would speak to them in an unnaturally sweet voice. Although many of us were frustrated with her behavior, no one dared speak up. After all, she was the president's wife. Eventually, several part-time housewives and student workers started quitting. The store became less cheerful, and morale dropped significantly. Just as I started seriously considering looking for another job, I found myself in the crosshairs of the president's wife. "You've been working at this store for a long time, haven't you?" she asked one day out of the blue. "Your child must be in college by now." "Which college?" The question caught me completely off guard. I didn't feel comfortable discussing my family, so I tried to steer the conversation elsewhere. She didn't seem to care. "You look incompetent," she said with a laugh. "I bet your child didn't even get into a decent college, did they?" Her words cut deep. I felt hurt, but just then, the front registers began to get busy again. I nodded silently and walked toward the customers to help. The truth is, I only graduated from middle school. I had been bullied terribly during high school. I tried to hang in there, but during the summer of my third year, I reached my limit and dropped out. Since then, I've been working part-time jobs. I met my husband while working one of those jobs, and eventually we got married. Education never mattered in our relationship or our home. But the president's wife was nothing like me. She constantly bragged about her prestigious university background, even when nobody asked. Yet curiously, she never actually mentioned which university she attended. That always struck me as odd, but I was never interested enough to pry. She seemed to assume that all housewives working at a supermarket had low educational backgrounds. I once overheard her making a similar comment to the new store manager. It was as if she needed to look down on us to feel superior. Other part-timers had told me they'd also been questioned about their education. The next day, while I was working my usual shift, the president's wife showed up again. "Excuse me," she said, calling me over. I looked up, only to see her smirking at me, as if something was amusing. "You're a middle school graduate, aren't you?" she said loudly. "I figured you didn't go to college, but I never imagined it was that bad." Then she added, in a voice dripping with sarcasm, "It's amazing that you can work here with such a background." I was stunned. Where had she found out? Then I remembered. The day before, the store manager had been reviewing part-timer resumes in the office. He must have shared that information with her. And now she was telling everyone. I had never tried to hide my education, but I couldn't understand why someone would go out of their way to humiliate another person like that. It was hurtful, unnecessary, cruel. But I took a breath, looked past her smug expression, and walked back to my duties, determined not to let her see me falter. My part-time colleagues didn't seem to care much about what was happening. They acted as if everything was normal, going about their tasks as usual. But ever since that day, the president's wife seemed to make it her mission to humiliate me. "Maybe you wouldn't understand, since you're a middle school graduate. Since you're a middle school graduate, at least do some cleaning." That became her catchphrase, her favorite way to belittle me. It was exhausting. Her remarks echoed in my mind long after the words left her lips. I started thinking, I don't have to stay here just to be treated like this. A few days later, the president's wife showed up at the store again. The moment I saw her, irritation welled up inside me. I sighed and tried to walk past her, hoping to avoid another confrontation. But she was standing near the cardboard box storage area, smirking. It was an area we usually avoided. Boxes were picked up by suppliers, and it wasn't our responsibility. Still, she seemed determined to force me to clean it up. "People like you should be covered in garbage," she said mockingly. "You bottom-dwelling middle school graduates are nothing but salary thieves." This time, we were in the back room, out of the customer's view. Normally, I could endure her jabs, but I had reached my limit. "Excuse me," I said firmly, "but I think I'm earning the salary I receive. I work hard. And honestly, I don't think education should be the measure of a person's worth or performance." She blinked in surprise, perhaps not expecting me to talk back. But I didn't stop there. "If you're here so often, why not be helpful to the store? We never really know what you're doing here. Do you come just to look down on us? You must have a lot of free time." Some employees were passing by, entering my line of sight, but I didn't care. I had to say what was on my mind. She narrowed her eyes at me, her voice laced with venom. "Unlike a lowlife like you, I'm busy. I take time out of my day to be here." "Oh, really?" I replied calmly. "So, what exactly are you doing at the store? Chatting with the manager? Flirting with the male employees and the high school boys? Looking down on the rest of us? That's what it looks like." Her face flushed a furious red. "Just by being here, I make the store more lively. You should be grateful for that," she snapped. I couldn't help but laugh. "Do you really believe that?" "None of the employees think so. The customers certainly don't. It's funny how someone with a high educational background can be so useless in practice." I let out every bit of frustration I'd been holding in for weeks. She was clearly stunned. Her only response was a weak, cliched threat. "Do you think you can keep working here after speaking to me like that?" I didn't hesitate. "Then I'll quit." She laughed mockingly. "Good. One less mouth to feed. It'll save us on labor costs." I smiled in return. "Yes, I suppose that's good for you." And with that, I turned and headed toward the locker room. When I entered the locker room, one of the part-timers who had witnessed the scene earlier was there. I told her everything that had happened. "Mary, are you really quitting?" she asked, her voice filled with sadness. We had worked together for years. "Yeah," I said softly. "Ever since the new manager came, it hasn't been fun. We're all just dragging ourselves through the shifts now. So many people have quit already, but they won't hire replacements. Too expensive, I guess. Now the workload is unbearable. I just can't do this anymore." She nodded slowly. I guess that's true. I left the locker room and headed to the front, where the manager and the president's wife were talking. They noticed me approaching. That was quick, the president's wife said, smirking. I heard the junior high school graduate is quitting. I wonder where someone like that will find work. The manager chuckled along with her. I stood tall and looked them both in the eyes. Even if I have nowhere else to work, I won't come back here. I'll return the uniform next week. Thank you for everything. And just like that, I walked out. As I stepped outside, I felt strangely refreshed. The following week, I returned to the store to hand in my uniform. But something was off. The store was unusually noisy. Near the cash register, a heated argument had broken out. Several customers were scolding the manager, and the atmosphere was tense. It looked like there had been a mistake at the register, and the customers were furious. It was chaos. But I had already quit. There was nothing I could do. I went toward the office to drop off my uniform. As I approached, I heard the familiar voice of the president's wife. Reluctantly, I opened the door. To my surprise, the former store manager, the one we all respected, was there too. Manager. I blurted out instinctively, before remembering he had been promoted to headquarters. It was habit. He smiled gently. The president's wife, however, quickly exited the office the moment I stepped inside. What happened at the register? I asked. It looked like a major problem. He sighed. There have been a lot of complaints lately. After you left, several other part-timers and student employees quit all at once. The manager has been trying to run the sales floor himself, but he doesn't know how to stock shelves or operate the register. Naturally, customers are unhappy. He paused, then added, today's trouble involved the president's wife. Apparently, she had been on the sales floor talking to a male employee. A customer mistook her for staff and asked a question. Her response? I don't know anything about that. She had brushed the customer off without a hint of courtesy or professionalism. The former manager continued explaining the chaos that had unfolded at the store since I left. It seemed the situation had only worsened. During one particularly busy afternoon, the president's wife had been mistaken for an employee while chatting with a male staff member on the sales floor. A customer had asked her a simple question, and instead of responding politely or directing them to someone who could help, she replied coldly, I don't know anything about that. The customer, visibly offended, lodged a complaint. Then things got worse. The current manager had rushed over to try and handle the situation, but in the process, he accidentally revealed the woman's identity. She's the president's wife. That one sentence set off a storm. The already frustrated customers were appalled that the president's wife, of all people, was speaking so disrespectfully, and to make matters worse, she wasn't even supposed to be interacting with customers. Complaints escalated rapidly, and the register area grew more and more crowded. Without trained part-time staff, since most had already quit, employees who normally didn't work the registers were forced to fill in. Mistakes piled up. Customers grew irritated. The line barely moved. And now, the manager was constantly being scolded by customers and superiors alike. The former store manager looked at me with quiet concern and asked, Why did you quit? I told him the truth, everything, about the harassment, the insults, and how working there had become unbearable. He listened, then nodded thoughtfully. You know, I heard something strange. I don't know the full story, but someone at headquarters mentioned that the president's wife didn't graduate from college either. My eyebrows rose. Really? Yes. Apparently, she's a high school graduate, he said. So, what was all that nonsense about education? I stared into the distance, absorbing this new information. Was she trying to cover up her own insecurity by lashing out at others? Pretending to be more educated than she really was? It made her behavior even more unsettling because it meant she might not even believe what she was saying. She was just projecting her own bitterness. 2 weeks later, I happened to pass by the old supermarket again. It was practically deserted. At that time of day, there were usually dozens of customers roaming the aisles, especially elderly folks looking for evening discounts. But now the store was eerily quiet. Not surprising, really, after all the customer complaints, poor service, and a mass exodus of staff. As I stood outside, reflecting on everything, someone called my name from behind. It was the former store manager. After we exchanged greetings, he smiled and said, "A new store is opening one station away. I wanted to ask, would you be interested in working there?" He explained that one of the employees he had personally trained was being promoted to store manager, and he believed this person would lead the store with compassion and confidence. I thought about it for a moment, then nodded. I'd love to. I immediately contacted a few of my former part-time coworkers. When my employment at the new store was confirmed, I was delighted to find that some of them would be working there too. The new store had a refreshing atmosphere. The manager was approachable and understanding, and the team, new part-timers and old friends alike, got along well. We took a different approach, focusing on locally made side dishes and fresh bread. The concept was well received. Customers appreciated the change, and I even began to recognize familiar faces from the previous store. The new store had a strong start. Rumors floated in from time to time. The old store remained understaffed. New hires would leave after only a short time. The current manager was constantly being scolded at head office meetings. Morale was low. I, on the other hand, had finally found peace again. About a month into working at the new store, something unexpected happened. The president's wife appeared. It wasn't exactly surprising. She was the president's wife, after all, but something about the way she walked in made it clear she had come for me. She marched up with her arms folded and a sneer on her face. "I heard a junior high school dropout is working at our store again, so I came to check." I met her gaze calmly. "Why would that be my fault?" "You made all the other employees quit, didn't you?" she accused, her voice rising. It was utterly ridiculous. I took a breath and said, clearly and without hesitation, "I didn't make anyone quit. I don't have that kind of power. I'm just a middle school graduate, remember?" Other staff members nearby began to gather, including the new store manager and some former coworkers. They looked concerned, but didn't interrupt. "If you want to know why people quit, why don't you ask them?" I continued. "Or maybe you already know." The part-timers behind me nodded in quiet agreement. "Shall I tell you why?" I said, now loud enough for others to hear. "Because you look down on people based on their educational background. You treat them like they're beneath you. And the manager you left in charge? He doesn't listen, he just talks. No one wants to work in a place where they're treated like that." The president's wife's face twisted with anger. "Power harassment? Are you accusing me of that? Do you have any evidence?" She stepped forward as if to grab me, but before she could touch me, the new store manager quickly stepped in between us. "Please don't do that to our staff," he said firmly. His calm but authoritative tone cut through the tension. The president's wife looked at him, shocked, but said nothing. Eventually, she turned on her heel and left. She didn't return after that. And even if she had, it wouldn't have mattered anymore. I had found a place where I could work in peace, surrounded by people who valued effort over background, teamwork over hierarchy, and respect over fear. Sometimes, it takes walking away from a toxic place to find where you truly belong. And as for that president's wife, let her believe whatever she wants. We were too busy creating something better. The manager's position would have been seriously compromised by standing up to the president's wife like that. I was about to say, "I'm fine," when he interrupted me firmly. "I am the manager of this store, and it is my responsibility to protect my employees. I will fulfill that role, whether you're the president's wife or not." At that moment, applause erupted from the other part-timers standing nearby. The president's wife finally lowered her hand, which had been reaching out as if to grab me. Taking a deep breath, I pulled out my smartphone. "I have evidence of power harassment," I declared. The president's wife shot me a sharp glare. I played the video. The screen showed the president's wife yelling at another part-timer at the previous store, completely unprovoked. And it wasn't just one isolated incident. There were several clips. Her face gradually paled. Then, other part-timers stepped forward with their own evidence. Among them was a video of me being insulted simply for being a middle school graduate. We had secretly conspired to collect evidence in case anyone experienced power harassment from the president's wife. While we hadn't gone as far as filing a lawsuit yet, the videos had been shared discreetly among part-time friends, so we had quite a few recordings on hand. "Manager, we're going to sue her," I said firmly. The other part-timers and the manager nodded in agreement. The president's wife, furious beyond words, turned to the manager with venom. "What's wrong with you? Do you think it's okay to say that to me? You're fired." "Fired," I repeated, laughing. "Oh, I recorded that too," I added. "So, we'll protect the manager who protected us." The president's wife's expression shifted again, and without another word, she spun on her heel and rushed to escape. I called out after her, "There are more important things than education, you know. Sometimes your humanity matters more when you enter society." She stopped, turned around, and said quietly, "How did you know that?" It was almost an inadvertent admission of her own insecurity. Everyone laughed, the other employees, myself, and realizing she had just self-destructed, the president's wife fled at a speed I had never seen before. After that day, we decided to take real action. We filed a lawsuit against the president's wife, armed with the videos recorded by part-timers and the manager's own admission that he had been covering up her harassment to protect his job. With solid evidence in hand, she couldn't escape responsibility. Eventually, we received compensation. Word spread quickly to other stores in the chain, and many employees came forward with similar complaints. The president's wife was sued for compensation at multiple locations. When the president himself learned of his wife's behavior for the first time, he was furious and ordered her to repay the damages by working herself. Since it's a locally owned supermarket, their house is nearby. One day, I saw the president's wife, angry and humiliated, working at a nearby drugstore. I couldn't help but laugh. Since then, we have been working hard under a trustworthy manager. The atmosphere is positive. Respect is mutual. And for the first time in a long while, I finally feel at peace. Please feel free to comment below if you like this. Remember to like and subscribers for more.